addicts, welcome back to another Alita review. This time we're going to be talking about Volume 7. I'm not going to spend too much time, wasting on unnecessary talk. We're just going to jump right into the recap. I am just going to mention like the core things that happened in the volume. We're not going to go as much in detail, so just let me know if you prefer this way or the old way. But needless to say, we're going to run through these real quick. So starting off the volume, we get to see Figure, but only for one page in this volume. I really thought we were going to see Figure for at least another volume before, he stepped out for a little bit or, something happened to him. But no, I guess Alita and Figure are staying in a relationship, but Figure just going to be staying in his hometown and waiting for Alita until her job as a tune unit is done, and Alita just leaves him with the simple instructions of don't cheat on me. But then after we get, I guess the tidying up of the last volume, we get to see actually our first look in Salem, which is really cool. I like the drastic difference and just, the fact that these, I guess, essentially these two different worlds are coexisting in the same story. So, it just leads to a whole new door opening up if we get actually stuff in Salem. But regardless, we get introduced to a new character named Lo Collins. Comment if you think it's Lau. I have no idea, but I'm just going to be calling her Lo for this video. And we get to see she is fresh on the job of the GIB, working as an operator. Funny enough, the only operator, and guess who she's assigned to? That's right, very own A1 unit, Alita, the Angel of Death for Salem. So we get to see, the introduction of those, or I guess, I keep wanting to say introduction, but it's the meeting up of those two, and Alita getting, I guess, the new sidekick or partner for this volume, maybe potentially longer than that as well. And I do like her character. She does serve more so, I think, as comic relief, but you can definitely tell they set her up to be, very deducing, quick-witted in, what she needs to do in terms of support for Alita in the battlefield. So I do like the dynamic they have. There's some funny moments, and I even like some of the tech stuff they do on the Salem side, whether it be the cool artillery or just the funny, like, Funko Alita version that they have. I'll put that on screen. I thought that was funny. Wasn't really expecting that. But we get to also see Desti Nova teased, and again for the first time, and we actually get some really important information that it's been nearly 11 years since Alita and Desti last saw each other in, I'm presuming, was Volume 5. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's insane because that's way longer than I thought the time skip might be, but I think it probably does the timeline a lot of good when you're probably going back and dissecting it. But we get to see basically the routine banner, but the main information that's really important about the volume is Desti's like, well, if you want to see Ito, go take out Din, the leader of the Barjacks. And so that leads Alita on her quest, I guess officially going after Din, and we do see that in this volume. We also get resurfacing of some old characters, or I guess touching on, or I guess giving us update on some info of other characters. The one that specifically resurfaces that we see is Kamoi. Yeah, I'm probably still saying that wrong too. Though we get to see a little bit of who she's kind of become, and what I guess prospects she's wanting to go after. Before I go into her prospects, I just want to say we get some information on Shamira, which no surprise, she's still a klutz or a dunce, whatever you want to call it, a ditz. That's probably the better term. Actually, that's more the right term. But yeah, and she's kind of turned into a baby-making factory, which Alita has the perfect expression when she hears that news. That's probably the face I would make. But anyway, we get to see that Kamoi does have this prospect of meeting Chaos, which is a radio broadcaster that is broadcasting through, I guess, the waste, and he's got a message that kind of seems too good to be true, at least for genuinely, but he is somebody that's willing to take a neutral stand amongst the fighting between the bandits and, the scrapyard or Salem and whatever, but he's just wanting people to, I guess, strive together to make a peaceful party. I'll put it on the panel so I don't misquote it, but with that, Alita gets some information that Chaos does have connections with the Barjaks, even though he is playing the neutral part. So she does want to go and meet him, and there's no complaints from Lo. Of course, she was pretty much a pushover in that moment. But we get them moving on to meet up with Chaos, and Chaos is a cool character. He's a little bit of a fuckboy and a little bit too handsy, but and he's one of those guys that will say "I love you" after meeting you for 2 seconds, apparently. But overall, like, his ability is cool, and he has this ability. I think it's called like psychometry. I'm struggling with words today, man. So forgive me. I'm not saying that one right either. But it's this ability where he can touch objects, or I guess I should specify non-living objects, and I guess kind of read the memories attached to the objects, or able to experience the emotions or the attachments that were placed on them by either people that previously owned them or interacted with them. And so, for instance, there's a moment where he's having to repair Alita, and he's able, just by touching her, able to access, I guess, the medical genius or know-how that Ito had, and was able to repair her. Another instance it gives is that since he's a radio broadcaster, he can pick up old relics that are music items and reconstruct old, like, rock music and stuff like that. So, you know, at least that gives me hope. If somebody has this ability in a real life apocalypse, I can still listen to Rolling Stones. But that being said, we also get our first encounter with Din, and Din, you know, I want to say the first introduction we get is kind of superficial. Like, it's cool, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like, let me see how you do against Alita before, you know, we go seeing, like, your unstoppable force, you know. But I do really find his ideals the most intriguing, and just his stance. I think out of anybody that Alita's really faced, I mean, besides Joe Segan, but Joe Segan wasn't really a villain or anything like that, and they shared, not necessarily the ideals, but I think the aspirations behind those ideals. Whereas in Din's, I think he's the closest to having Alita see eye to eye with him. Not completely, but, you know, just in theory, like, you know, if he wasn't batshit. But there's also some cool things that we get revelation to. For instance, Din and Chaos being the same person, but, you know, having that multiple personalities, which, quite frankly, I'm a sucker for. I love when characters or villains especially have that trait about them. I think it's one of those things that I see in a good amount of things, but it's not oversaturated enough that I think it's tiresome yet. So that's something that is probably going to be my guilty pleasure about this volume. But with that being said, that's the end of the, I guess, quote-unquote recap, or, you know, just looking at the actual details in the volume. I want to talk a little bit about speculation a bit, just because I find this really interesting. I don't even remember what number volume it was, but it was when we were in the tail end of the Motorball arc, and her old manager, gosh, I'm losing his name, not Bill, it was something kind of like that, I think. You're gonna tell me in the comments, I'm sure. But how he suddenly died, and it seemed very just out of the nowhere, out of the blue. That kind of shows up again with the death of Yasmin, which I didn't talk about her, but she's somebody really close to Chaos, and she's seemingly killed by the same people that, or I guess the same cyborgs that we know were sent from Destiny Nova to kill Alita earlier in the volume. And oh my gosh, the one thing I forgot to mention too is Destiny Nova is the father of Chaos, so there's another connection there too, which we have this three-ring circus, or not three-ring circus, but we have this web of, you know, what Alita's kind of going after. I mean, she wants revenge on Destiny. She's been told by Zalem that she needs to kill, or at least capture Destiny, and then Destiny is attached to the Barjuk somehow. And I don't know in this case if Destiny was directly involved with the Barjaks, or if they're just associating that he had dealings with the Barjaks because Chaos was basically the leader, or his son, you know, was basically the leader of the Barjek. So I'm really curious to see how that goes out. Something's just telling me that we're going to be seeing a bigger plot unveiled here where, you know, maybe Zalem even orchestrated all of this to go. I don't know. That's probably some wild speculation. I'm not even going to pretend if that's mildly accurate, because even myself, I feel like that's more wishful thinking. Because, and it might be because, you know, there are some things plot-wise that seem a bit loose or weak, and so that would really explain some of those, or I guess just, you know, I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit more of a mystery that's alluded to, but it could just be that the writing is in a sloppy place that, you know, it just appears like that, but it's not that at all, and it gives an appeal, or I guess a look that it's more genius than it actually is. But that's something I won't know until I read till the end, you know, and see if that's the case. But, you know, as a volume itself, I think it is a solid volume. It's not as good as the last volume, because there is a couple of moments where it is just flat out kind of bad writing. Not all of it. There's just like one in particular that, for instance, how they're getting to each place, it's a lot of that coincidence, or it's just like, whoa, I can't believe this happened. Oh, and this happened too. Kind of writing, you know, so like when they're getting from point to point, they just happen to run in to Kamui. They just happen to pick it up on the radar that there's something going down near them, and it just happens to be somebody that Alita hasn't seen in probably a decade, you know, and then we have another moment in the volume where they're getting on the road after they meet up with Kamui again to meet Chaos, and Alita and Kamui just out of the blue fall into like a sinkhole in the ground, and they just so happen to get carried into a current that leads them to an underground layer that so happens to be ruled by Chaos. I mean, it's just one of those things that I think that's the side that's lazy, and you can tell it's lazy. And I'm just not a fan of that. Some people, you know, be like, it's whatever. For me, I don't really think that's, you know, worth giving praise to, you know. So with that being said, I would rate this volume a worth it, which I think the last volume got an FFA. So yeah, it's a significant hint, but there is some great things I like. Obviously, you know, like I said, I'm a sucker for that split personality thing. So I really like that, even if it doesn't really amount to much. That's another thing too. The ending has a close to the ending has a really cool battle, and then the very ending has a battle that you think is even going to be more cool, but for a different reason. And then it just abruptly ends after not even one hit, just kind of one passing by, and then a interruption with an outside force. Luckily enough, another current of water. So yeah, that's some things that led me to giving it a lower rating. But overall, again, even though this is a setup volume, I'm still liking what I'm seeing. I'm liking that they saved Dusty for this long, and in the story, it's been a good amount of time. I think next volume we'll definitely see Ito probably, or at least Dusty in some capacity. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that's going to play out, because I think since I think there's 3 volumes left in the original series, so Dusty might be, I don't know, because I feel like Dusty is going to be the big bad for this original story, but I think Zalem, or maybe some other force that we don't know about yet, might be the bigger villain going after that. But I don't know if we'll see that in the original run. You know, that's just my take. That's just my thought. Let me know if you guys read the volume and what you thought of it. I will be releasing, or I guess, yeah, this will go public after I already have volume 8 recorded and edited. So expect Volume 8 to be just a day or the day after next when this uploads. Because I wanted to have these back-to-back since it had been a while since we got one out. But anyway, guys, that will conclude this review. I jumped around a little bit more, but, let me know if you thought this version a little bit more appealing. It's ended up going to be a little bit shorter, so that's good. But anyway, guys, hope you have a great day. And as always, peace, addicts.